unexplainable. Never needed match. It's unexplainable. It's unconditional. It's unforgettable. Unstoppable. Unpredictable. It's so invitable. Indescribable. Hello, and welcome. That is not our thing. Hold on, y'all. I'm messing up big time. Welcome to his
and her perspective.
Here at His and Her Perspective, we find common ground to harmonize relationships. And we do that by having conversations like we're going to have today with myself, Coach Michelamonè,
and I'm Von, the Love Alchemist. Let's get it.
Yes, we are coaches. We are relationship coaches, life coaches, and we come on here every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to meet with you, to engage with you, to share with you our thoughts and our perspectives on the specific topic. And today we are going to talk about why y'all all up in our business, taking a deeper look into the impact in-laws on relationships. And it's going to be really hot. So make sure that you are, first of all, sharing, subscribing, and saying something. If you're looking at us right now, go ahead and click the share button. Go ahead, do a watch party, invite your family, your friends, your foes, whoever you think could be a benefit to this, because we're going to talk about relationships. And, some people have been in common law marriages, so invite those people too. We want to make sure that we are getting out to as many people as possible, because what we're doing, we believe, is beneficial, especially to the relationships nowadays. So many people are not doing well, and we want to make sure that we're helping as much as we can. So we're going to start in on this. Let me go ahead and share this really quickly. This is so funny. So let's share that. Oh, let me go back. Hold on, because I didn't share the audio. Stop sharing. Otherwise, that just won't work. So take a look at this, y'all. Has anybody on here ever dealt with situations like this?
I need a 5-letter word meaning headache.
How about in-law?
Oh, please. Thank you.
Mother Jefferson.
Why don't you call me Mama? After all, you're just like a daughter to me, dear.
Look, Mother Jefferson, I'll be right back, George.
Now, I don't have to stand here and be insulted.
You are so right. You can go anywhere.
I don't have to stand for that.
Then sit down. Oh, my God. What's wrong, Rick?
What's the matter?
What's wrong? It's happening.
What's happening?
I'm finally agreeing with your mother.
Oh my goodness, I know. I think I've been in all of those situations, actually. I've never had any bad issues with in-laws, though.
No, me either.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. At the beginning of my marriage, things were a little bit strained between my wife and my family.
Okay.
Right? It just didn't start off as smooth as we would have liked, and I think a good bit of it had to do with me getting married as young as I did, and the family, of course, particularly my mom didn't think I was ready to be getting married, and she was right. But at the same time, it was what it was. I mean, I was still technically, legally a grown man, 18. I had a child, and as a matter of fact, I had 2 children. So, and I was marrying the mother of my children. So, I think, well, in hindsight, I definitely did the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how long did it take before that all came, into togetherness?
What do you mean before they started before things smoothed out?
Yeah.
It was years. It was years because it was just kind of a little tension there, like little silent tensions. And so there was never any knockdown, drag out, blow up arguments or nothing. But it's just, that little subtle thing. It just kind of lingered. And one day, I don't even remember how it happened, but we were probably together for the better part of 10 years or so. And then things just started smoothing out. And now, I mean, they talk pretty good. So, and they get along very well.
Was there anything in particular, like, I've heard of people having issues because the mom babies the husband, or the dad gives money to the wife for things that they really can't afford, or they're always stopping by, or what type of issue? Was it anything in particular?
I think, honestly, man, I think that my mother just wasn't ready to see me fly like that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? She was always, she was crazy about me. I was the firstborn, and she was a very young mother. So but when I got married, I think my mother was only like 35, 36, something like that. Yeah, 36. And so I think it was just kind of hard for her to, maybe let go a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my wife got pregnant, when I was very young. So I was 16 when she got pregnant the first time, and 17 when she got pregnant the second time. And so my mother, I think she had concerns about maybe having to help and being an armchair grandmother. And she was only 35, 36, and all these, maybe she had some preconceived notions, maybe some assumptions that she made. But the beauty of it is that I never had to ask my mother for anything when it came to it. I mean, me and my wife, from the time I was 17, when the first one was born, we've always took care of things.
Yeah.
So nobody outside of it had to help us at all, really, other than what they wanted to do. But I think that the assumption was that she was going to have to contribute, considerably more, whether it was through money or babysitting or whatever.
Okay.
And then on top of that, let me add this. My mother was married at the time to my stepfather, and he didn't like my wife for whatever reason. They never had any real conflict or anything. He just didn't like my wife.
Wow.
So, and he never explained to me why. I think his thought was maybe that she didn't want nothing out of life, because, how could she let herself get pregnant at 17, whatever. And I'm like, but we did that together, though.
I was gonna say they had no idea that you guys planned this whole thing.
Right.
17 years old, you're like, hey, let's do this together, right? So we did not, speaking of that, we did not honor them because they were there with a couple. Did you want to go backwards and just go ahead, or what you want to do?
Yeah. We always like to shout out every week a couple that just put the spotlight on them. Instead of all this negativity that's going on about who's getting divorced, we like to shout out some couples that are winning. And so shout out to my mom and my step pop. They've been together, I think, man, maybe 20, 25 years.
I love it.
Something like that. And they're doing and this ain't the same stepfather that I'm talking about. My mother got married again. So,
okay. See,
but
you know what? When I hear these, that's what I was talking about last week. When I hear these couples that have been together after a relationship before, it just encourages me. So it just encourages me.
Yeah. So this is my mother's third marriage, and they've been together because my mother and my father, when they originally got married when I was very young, and they didn't last very long. Mm-hmm. So, and then the next one that she got married to, my stepfather, he died several years ago, actually. It's been, and so this marriage has been going on for 20 plus years. I want to say 22, 23 years. I forget exactly what the number is, but they're doing great. And they're going to ride off into the twilight together. So shout out to mom and pop. You're doing good.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, y'all, if y'all want us to highlight you and talk about how great you've been in your marriage and how long you've been married, and kind of, uplift some people who are having some challenges in their marriages, or they're trying to just get that encouragement that it can keep going, that they're going to get over the 7-year itch, or they're going to get through the problems that they're going through, please make sure that you email us at harmony@hisandherperspective.com so that we can go ahead and highlight you. If you don't want to email us, you can go ahead and DM us, but we'd like a picture so that we can put that up as well. We want to just kind of keep this going because we believe that there's so much negativity about couples, especially Black couples, that we want to highlight the couples that are winning. All right, so let's go on back into our conversation. We kind of bouncing around. We got a little happy. Well, I got a little happy. A little forward. I should have followed my little thing I got over here, but I got a little. That's okay. It happens. So listen. So what are some of the things that you believe, Coach Vaughn, that are some issues that couples are having in regards to the in-laws and why what the impact is on in-laws and the relationships with the couple?
Yeah, so it's a lot of them. I mean, it varies from family to family, obviously. But I was listening to a brother talk, and he was describing how the relationship between his wife and her father, and for a while, he would just kind of stay out of it, but he noticed one day that his father-in-law was really getting on to his wife. And I guess he was kind of berating her and maybe even using some expletives, maybe cussing at her a little bit. And he couldn't take it anymore. So he grabbed the phone from his wife and he said, "Hey, look, Pop, you can't talk to my wife like that." And so
was her father or his father?
It was the woman's father.
Okay.
And so, but he called him Dad.
Right.
Or Pop. He said, "You can't talk to my wife like that." And the father-in-law responded, "Well, that's my daughter. And she was my daughter first and blah, blah, blah." He said, "I understand that, Pop. I don't mean any disrespect, but she's my wife now, and you can't talk to my wife like that."
Right.
And so they went back and forth a little bit. The father-in-law gave a little bit of pushback, but ultimately he had to stand down, and rightfully so, because he was in the wrong.
Leave and cleave.
So that's one of the issues that people tend to have. I don't think it quite works the same in the other direction, but there have been scenarios where.
Wait. Let's back up. What do you mean you don't think it quite happens that way in the other direction?
Well, if a mom was talking to her own daughter, then the husband wouldn't intervene because that's woman to woman. And I think there would be, I wouldn't intervene in something like that. But if my father-in-law, had some nasty words for my wife, then I'm definitely gonna have some things to say to him, like, something similar to my man, like, "You can't talk to my wife like that."
Right. Yeah. That's out of order.
Yeah, ain't no man talking bad to my wife except me.
And you're not gonna do it, so we ain't worried about that.
Nah, I don't yeah.
Because I think that a lot of times, parents do not realize that their children are no longer children, no matter what age they got married at. Like you got married young. Right. So they still have to realize that once they've become husband or wife to another person, that they are now grown, period, done. And outside of that, they have now left and are now cleaving to the spouse. And that relationship is totally now separate from the relationship, and they have to treat them as adults. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. They want to step in, especially if the woman is going back and talking to the mother about situations, because, by right, it's not a bad thing, but it becomes a challenge when the mother is now taking what she knows and putting it against the relationship.
Right.
Stepping in and saying things like, "Well, you shouldn't be with him," or, trying to intervene on her daughter's behalf, or vice versa with the husband, with the dad. So things like that. I never had issues at all. Any of my marriages, as a matter of fact, every marriage, I still am connected to some in-law in them, everyone. Yeah. And I have cousins that I call my cousins, that are closer to me than the ex.
Yeah.
So
ours has come full circle, because I think my mother actually likes my wife now more than she likes me. and I'm okay with that because you know all I wanted. I'm tongue in cheek, but really, I think she might, but but I'm cool, you know, because for the longest, you know, I'm a family guy, you know, and so I always wanted them to get along, you know, and be good and all of that. So the fact that they call each other and talk on the phone, you know, that's peace for me. So. What about y'all? Any of the listening audience? Do you have any conflicts that you want to share, or have you had any conflicts in the past?
So we got Neil who says, hey, make sure that you all are saying something to us. If you're looking at us right now, make sure that you're saying hello. We would love to say hello back to you. Your mother ever told you when you walk into a room and you see someone there that you just come in and you say hello, and then that person will say hello right back. So just come in and say hello to us.
Sarika Marie says, hey, so shout out to Sarika and Kevin. They're both watching. What's up, family?
Right. Hello. Make sure that you guys are doing a watch party for us. We believe that what we're doing will be able to help a lot of people, and we would need your assistance in to be able to do that. So just go ahead and share it. Do a watch party for us. So with me, you know, one of the things I was doing, kind of reading up and trying to look at some of the common in-law problems. And a few of the things I saw was things about being too controlling, the family being rude or unfriendly. You know, you talked about that. Yeah. Treating the spouse like a kid, and criticizing and giving unsolicited advice. Now, has anybody out there ever had a situation where the family, the in-laws, because in-laws don't just end with the mother or the father. You've got the in-law, sister-in-law, the brother-in-law, the cousin-in-law, you know, have all those other in-laws that may be trying to interject within your relationship. So has anybody ever had that situation before? Talk to us, y'all. Talk to us. Liven up. It's Sunday.
My wife just responded to me. She said she doesn't. Stop playing. So if my wife disagrees with me on that, but I'm gonna stand firm on that. I think she might like my wife a little. My wife is more likable than me, but I'm okay with that.
But and then they have a lot more in common because they're females. Yeah. So there are some things that they can probably discuss that she probably would never discuss with you.
And they're both Pisces too.
Oh, okay. So now that you know, yeah. So I mean, I personally, I would tell my dad anything. And probably my dad, I always do something with shock value when I go home, just to see how my father will respond. But so I would still be the same with either parent, as far as that's concerned.
We got a few more people watching. We got Kim Polk. What up, Kim? Kalanta, Curtis, Robert, my son Vaughn II, or Junior, whichever you prefer, sir. Travis, Stephanie, Tasha, Jeffrey, Althea or Arthea, and Sharia. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Shaquana, she says, my husband had the hardest time when we first were married. My family was horrible. We moved away very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens. You have to separate yourself sometimes to move away from the family so that you can now create a life of your own. And sometimes it can be a little bit challenging because you're going to miss your family, and you know you may feel some kind of way because some people. My husband had the hardest time when we first were married. My family was horrible. We moved away very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me doubling.
That happens. You have to. You said what now?
That was me. Sorry about that.
You're over there messing up. It's all right. Shaquana also said, my parents were mean and my cousins were awful. Everyone bullied him. Oh my God, that is horrible. I wonder why. Was there anything in particular, Shaquana, that happened that would cause that? That's crazy. So, Vaughn, in that type of situation, what do you think a guy should do if he's in that particular situation? He doesn't want to, I'm sure, pull her family away from her. You know, what would you, as a man, how would have dealt with that?
You know, and these things happen at different stages in our lives too. I know when I was a younger man, you know, I would have responded differently than I might respond today. But first and foremost, I think that the husband and the wife, you have to insulate yourselves. Look, like the United States says when it comes to war, you have to protect and defend against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
Right? And so if there's anybody that poses a threat to your marriage, like Shaquana said, they moved away. And that's one of the best things. That's probably the best thing you can do. And I think that was probably the best thing that my wife and I could have done. I joined the military at 18 years old. By the time we were 19, by the time I was 19, we were living in Norfolk, Virginia, and we lived away for 20 years. So, or not 20 years, but often we came back a couple times. I got stationed in Great Lakes for 3 years, but for the most part, we spent our entire marriage outside of Chicago, and that was probably the best thing that could have happened to us. I don't think we would have survived otherwise.
Wow. She said, no, not anything would set them off. He was sweet and polite at all time. None of them were married and or had fathers in the home. And that plays a lot. If there's no examples of healthy relationships, they're going to automatically try to tear yours down because they don't know what it even looks like. So anything that looks foreign to them, they're going to come against. There's a saying that something about when people don't understand. What is that saying? When people don't understand, they go against it or something like that. I can't think of that saying though.
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, it's kind of like being, if you don't, something that you don't, you fear what you don't understand.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So she says, I believe that they were jealous. I'm sure.
And healthy-minded men stabilize the environment. You add balance to the environment. And so anytime you have a family dynamic that you're moving into and there are no men present, that's a lot for any man to deal with. Typically, now of course there are exceptions, but as a rule, I think any man marrying into a family full of women and there are no healthy-minded masculine men present, that's going to cause some challenges to the marriage. It's going to interfere with the parenting because when you have an environment that's saturated, for lack of a better word, with estrogen, with feminine presence, with feminine perspectives, they will overwhelm your masculine input. And oftentimes they don't have. We live in a society right now that doesn't respect the masculine perspective,
right?
And so they will tend to or attempt to oftentimes override or overrule even your fatherly perspective as it pertains to raising children. So it can be a problem for sure.
And that's because 85% of people and children are being raised. 85% of people are being raised by the matriarchal system, be it only women in the family, in the household. You go to schools now, all these teachers are females. It's just how it is. So that male's voice has to be very assertive, very confident, and very much present. And when it's not, like Coach Vaughn says, it kind of gets overridden.
Yeah. And the tricky part to that oftentimes is that so many of us were raised by women that we tend to govern, even when we're filling the roles as men, we tend to govern with very feminine-like tendencies. We tend to govern with a much more emotion-based rather than a logic-based philosophy or approach to parenting. I was affected by that. I was raised by a single mom, and I saw the way she raised, and so I got the majority of my parenting cues from her.
Right.
You see, and so my son now, of course, he has to unlearn even though my son grew up with his father, me, he got a lot of his parenting from me, who learned from my mother instead of a balance of my mother and father. And so there are things that he and I discuss as we are attempting to unlearn some of the programming that I instilled in him. So first generation fatherhood is rough, for a lot of us, and it's hard to recover from.
It is. But you know what? There are some other dynamics that we go through when it comes to in-laws. You got some people who, when they come in, they're jealous, where they try to sabotage the relationship. I've seen people. I have a client, as a matter of fact, who had the father was coming on to her and she couldn't say anything because she automatically knew, or I won't say knew, but kind of felt like if she said something that the husband would believe the father, so then it would be a situation, right?
Yeah.
You know, I've seen movies like that,
That's a trick bag. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was a JFK movie where the husband, the father was sleeping with the wife. It was one of these movies about one of the presidents.
Yeah.
And she for years she never would say anything. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was a fake movie or if it was about a president, but I remember the president in the movie. So I can't think of the name of it. It was a white couple. He was sleeping with the wife all these years. Wow. And then, yeah, it was crazy. I was like, oh my God. And she couldn't say anything. He was basically raping her. Wouldn't say anything. So I don't know if that was a movie, as in it wasn't real. I don't remember that part, but I remember the movie. So it's crazy.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that one of the things that I'm just going to ask before I give you the answer that came from the other perspective. Do you think that, or what do you all think about sharing some of your family business, your personal business between you and your husband and your wife, sharing that with, let's just say you have a real close relationship with the mother-in-law as a wife, or the father-in-law as a husband, or any combination, right? What do you think about sharing your personal and intimate information with the family, the in-laws?
I believe personally that if it's in a healthy way and it's not secretive kept from the husband or kept from the wife, then it could be okay. But many times that happens when the party that's sharing feels alone, feels left out, feels like, oh, well, you guys just don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
Like I have a client who she shares things with the husband's family because they look at him like, oh, he's a hero, but he treats her like garbage. So she shares little inklings with them so that she can kind of feel vindicated, that she doesn't feel alone in going through this, that they see who he really is behind closed doors.
Wow.
So in that particular instance, I think that you have to really tap into your motive. What is your motive for really sharing this information? Is it to share to really get help, or is it to share to uncover or expose? What is that information for? I've been in that situation where I was like, oh no, y'all not gonna look at me crazy. He will not be the one that everybody's looking at like, oh, she's crazy, and now what's she doing to my son? And I'm about to tell. I'm telling everything. I did not want to feel alone in that situation, So yeah, but it wasn't right because my motives they weren't good.
Yeah, there's a couple different schools of thought. I can understand that one that you just shared. My wife has always been under the philosophy that, she would never tell her family what went on between me and her. Mm-hmm. And because, what oftentimes what happens is, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're upset, you might go and vent to some of your family members about what happened. And this is kind of a little bit different, but let's just say I was upset with my wife, and then I went and vented to my own mother about my wife. At some point, I'm gonna cool off.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm gonna forgive my wife a whole lot faster than my mother would.
Yep.
And then the other side, if let's just say I was close enough to her father, and I was, there are people who will literally badmouth their own spouse to the in-laws. So that would be like me going to my father-in-law saying, man, your daughter, man, she a knucklehead, or whatever it is that I might say. There are people who might do things like that. And I think that's a very, very dangerous habit.
It really is, because you, like you said, once you cool off, y'all are good, y'all loving on each other and all of these things. And then the family is looking at y'all like, oh, I still don't like you because you shared these personal information, this
Right.
personal information. And that's why I say you can't do that. Pillow talk, you cannot fight pillow talk. Pillow talk is something that you will never be able to come up against. So if somebody can come and be non-biased, like I'll tell a family member in a minute, especially being Coach Michelamonè, you want me to teach you how to stay with them? Great. You want me to help you leave? Either way, I'm neutral. I'm not going to tell you ever to stay, and I'm not going to ever tell you to go. I want to know what you want to do, and we're going to work that thing out.
Yep.
Because as soon as you're like, well, let's gather all your stuff, and then you look a week later and they're like, well, no, I don't want to leave.
Right. Right.
And you like, I spent all this money, whatever.
Yeah. And it's just like it's almost similar to domestic violence would be another situation. We just did a domestic violence drive last week, and but just to the point that we're discussing here, if you're into it with your wife, and then you vent to one side or the other, and then they attempt to come to your rescue,
right,
and they start attacking your significant other, at some point you're going to snap out of it. And one of the things that police officers often say is domestic violence situations are the worst, because the wife might call the cops on the husband, or the husband might call the cops on the wife. But when the cop gets there to arrest, then the one who was being hurt will oftentimes turn on the police officers and give them hell for showing up, doing what they were called to do. We got a comment. Sharia says, it depends on the family. You just have to know your players. My mother and my mother-in-law were the type of parents who were always impartial or unbiased, despite who was bringing the questions, the need for help or concerns. If I was wrong, I was wrong. If he was wrong, he was wrong, and usually he was.
You're like, yeah, he's wrong.
That's yeah. My wife did the same thing.
And that's, but again, like she said, you do have to know your players. And I still think I'm still at the school of, you still need to be very leery.
Yeah.
Because, real talk, blood is thicker than water. Done. So it doesn't, if you get to the end of that thing, I knew she wasn't no good. I knew he wasn't no good. You should have left them a long time ago. And you won't hear that, or you might at the end. But we got to be really careful about what we do divulge. The whole point in you becoming one is to gather your own family and leave and cleave. And then you gather, there should be some intimacy in your marriage, especially that you're not sharing with your family.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest mistakes that I will say I did in my relationships. There were some things I never should have shared, but I shared them because I was hurt. And of course, when somebody is going through a painful situation and they feel all alone, the very thing that they're going to do is reach out for help. And that help to me during that time was somebody hearing me, because I felt like I was stifled. I felt like nobody was listening, that nobody heard me, that everybody thought that this person was the best thing since sliced bread. And I needed somebody to hear and see me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Brother James.
What's up, Brother James? Peace to you, man.
So I mean, it really depends.
There's an old adage that says, when you marry the family. What do you think about that?
You know what? I say this. I say that you don't have to.
Okay.
But I think that it's inevitable, because whether you take yourself and pick up and move, like some people have, like you guys talked about today, there's still going to be aspects of that family that you have to intertwine with, be it graduations, birthday parties, Christmas, Thanksgiving, things of that sort, DNA gene situation that comes up. and you're like, where does that come from? And you're trying to figure out why your child is acting a certain way. Well, yeah, they act like the grandparent, so I think that some way, shape, or form, the family is going to be intertwined. You just, I am not of the school of, you marry me, you marry my family, unless it's my kids, because those are the only people that you really have to deal with.
Yeah. And I think it depends on how close your spouse is to their family. So if you have a spouse that's completely or very disconnected from the family, then, you're less likely to be required to be in their presence, right? To be around them or whatever. But if you marry into a family, or if you marry someone who's very close to their family, like my family was very close knit as I was growing up. So my cousins, it's like almost 20 of us. And we were all pretty close. We for the most part, we grew up like brothers and sisters. And so my wife was marrying into that. And so, any children that you produce, when you marry somebody that's close to their family, any children that you produce, they're going to feel like they have a certain right to those children. Now you have to set healthy boundaries,
right?
And that's between you and your spouse to discuss and figure out what those boundaries are, where those boundaries lie. But they are to some degree entitled to an extension of their family member, as long as they don't violate, like I said. So,
and I think that that's really important, because like me, like as a matter of fact, just a couple weeks ago, I had a family member or cousin who reached out to me, and I'm like, she's called me cousin. How are we cousins? Because our family, once my grandmother passed, our family kind of dissipated. She was the matriarch of the family, and which is what connected us. So it's really important to make sure that there's some type of connection with those kids, because if that child is separated and they don't have, connections to their cousins, their aunties, or uncles, then they feel like they're by themselves, and that could be, a detriment to those young kids.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I was watching, this was so funny. Steve Harvey, they had a show, and one of the couples stood up. They had been married for 25 years. And out of the 25 years, the black guy was married to a Hispanic woman, and their family was at everything. They were never gone. The grandmother went on their honeymoon because she was the one with the money. So she took them so that she could pay for everything. Every family vacation, he was like, all I see is Puerto Ricans. So it was pretty funny, but that was way too much.
Yeah.
I mean, you should not be intertwined that much. There should be some disconnection somewhere.
Yeah. You definitely have to draw the line. Let me ask you this, and this is a question to the family as well. You guys feel free to chime in. What if you have beef with somebody in your spouse's family?
Now, I've never had that situation. So
let's make it real personal, and let's just say that there's some heavy conflict between you as the spouse and your mother or father-in-law. Let's say there's a real heavy conflict. Maybe you were heavily offended, or you didn't like the way they disciplined the child, one of your children. How do you handle that? What do you think about that?
I think that you need to handle it carefully. Now, I don't think that I had any issues in the marriages with my in-laws. I kind of had figured out some other things later, but never like that of my knowledge. But as far as children are concerned, they should not come into your household to tell you how to discipline your children. Right. Now, if they feel like you're abusing them, because there's some things like that happens where the stepfather or stepmother may be mistreating or treating the child a little bit differently, then, you have to, again, it has to be very careful, because some things can go way south really quickly.
What do you think, family? Y'all got any input on that? I'm trying to kind of save my my thoughts for last, but I'd like to know what the family thinks about that.
Yeah, y'all come on and chime in on us. Let us know what you think. Because yeah, I don't I was thinking about any major that I had. I didn't have any of those issues. Not that I know of. It
Yeah.
has been a while.
I
Um,
I'll say this. Everybody's kind of slow to respond. Linda Powell says, I think that in-laws should know their place. In-laws shouldn't get involved in their children's marriage, um, but be supportive. Yes.
mhm.
Um, some people might think that this is the coward way out. I think this is a smart way out. But I would say if I had, um, it's different when it's man to man, I think. And if I had a problem with my father-in-law, we have the type of rapport where I could go to him and just kind of discuss whatever the problem was. But depending on the problem, I might let my wife do the dirty work
Mm,
because
mm,
they tend to know the family member, and people don't always take what you say at face value. Some people are very easily offended or
right.
whatever, and so depending on what the problem is, I might let my wife do the dirty work. I might let her go and address whatever the issue is, and let them discuss it, hash it out or whatever, because their relationship is probably less fragile than
Right.
the relationship that I might have with the in-laws. What do you
Mhm.
think about that approach?
I think that's a very smart approach, actually. I think that the whoever's connected to the family by blood should be the ones to go to it. And then if they still can't, it's kind of like the scripture that says, you know, if you have an ought with your brother, you go and talk to them. If they don't receive you, you come back with somebody else. So if they don't receive it, then you bring your spouse and
Yeah.
let's have this conversation together. Because apparently you didn't take my spouse, you know, serious enough that you thought what we sent, what we said was not serious. So I think that's a really good approach to be able to do that.
Yeah. You
That's
know,
what I
you
would do.
played that Jefferson's clip at the beginning, and even with as funny as that is, or as it was, there are a lot of mother-in-laws who tend to be very disrespectful towards the daughter-in-law.
Very much so.
Yeah, and so in that vein, there are a lot of um, husbands who aren't as assertive as they need to be in drawing the line between a man. A lot of men aren't as assertive as we need to be in drawing the line between, or the boundaries between, mom and wife.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so oftentimes, for the sake of keeping the peace, the wife might not want to offend the mother-in-law, and so even though she's been offended, she's looking for the husband to come to her defense, or establish those healthy boundaries between mom and wife. And it is often in that failure to do so, the failure of the husband to establish those boundaries, that can create a lot of internal strife between the husband and the wife. Have you ever
You're
seen that?
absolutely right. It makes sense. I actually can attest to a similar situation. My son, who's been married, I think they've been married close to 3 years, almost 4 years. And but they've been together probably like 7 years now. And so his wife is a lot like me, right? So because I was kind of that bossy, strict mother, he kind of gets that from her, right? They've
Yeah.
come together a lot easier now, but in the beginning, he would say things like, "You acting like my mama." And she would just get so mad. Like, I don't want him saying I'm acting like you, you know. And I'm thinking
Mm.
that's a good thing. I mean, I love my daughter-in-law. That is my baby. But you know, but there was some strife in the middle. I'm like, wait a minute, honey, what you say to my son? You know, because naturally, as the mother, you want to make sure that your son or daughter, in the case of that other situation, that are you protecting them? Are you here for them? What's really going on?
Yeah.
And until I even when they were dating, until I understood both sides, and it wasn't my son coming to me telling me this and telling me that, and I heard her, so I'm like, see, you got me over here about to jump on this girl.
Mhm.
But it was that mother thing that I had to, especially once they got married, I understand the dynamics of marriage, and I knew that I had to back off. Just complete, it was just not right. The Bible says, let no man or woman put asunder what God has placed together. And if we tend to come into that, we're going to make problems anyway.
Yeah.
We got, James says, I've been there, Brother Vaughn. I put up with my in-laws' disrespect for a little time for my wife's sake, but I had to put my foot down, and I'm glad I did. They didn't like me, but they did respect me. All right now, Brother James, that's right.
Yep.
You don't have to like them, respect.
Yep. And I'll take respect over like any day.
And I even said that to my daughter-in-law. I said, it was a time when I was like, you know what? There was a time I didn't like you, but I totally respected you, because she would come in and she would like, oh, we're not doing that. And I'm like, what you mean? My son, and she's like, oh, we're not doing that. And so I even though I did not like how, because I felt like I'm his mother, you're going to, and she was like, but I'm his wife. And I was like, you right, girl. You right. I had to back down and really say, you out of order, Michelamonè. You're out of order.
And see, now we live in a culture now. I mean, we have so much more, maybe not as much these days, but there's always been a lot of reverence for our mothers, right? Their songs, Dear Mama, I'll always love my mama.
Right.
And I remember hearing Tupac in his song, Dear Mama, ain't a woman alive that can take my mama's place.
Right.
And so we have, I think, adopted some very unhealthy perspectives as it pertains to where mom fits with respect to where the wife is. And so many of us as men, and I think largely because our culture is so fractured, and there aren't a lot of men in place, or enough men, I should say, in place that help us establish these boundaries. And so there are many men who will carry this idea that mom and wife are parallel, right? But the reality is, once you get married, mom takes a back seat.
Yeah.
Wife is number one. Period. And as a young male, as a young married man, I had that problem. And my wife put up with that for, longer than she had to, for sure. But, she got on my case pretty good. And we had some conflicts in the earlier years. But that's definitely a healthy boundary that has to be established. Wife number one, mom is a distant second. You got another comment?
Yeah, James says, I have a question. What if that's going on and your spouse takes the side of the family?
Okay, so what if what's going on? The conflict? Is that what he means?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking he's saying.
Yeah, so as long as she takes, in my mind anyway, don't front me. You know what I mean? Don't front me. If you disagree with me, then we need to disagree in private. Now, if I'm dead wrong, if I'm standing on the family dinner table at Thanksgiving and the whole family's there, all the in-laws there, and I'm standing on the table drunk and I'm cussing, and going, acting the fool, that's one thing. But if they're being disrespectful, or there are variables, right? But I'll just say, generally speaking, you are a united front. Husband and wife are a united front, and we're going to disagree in private. I'm gonna always support my wife in public, and then we're going to discuss things, in a healthy way in private. Does that answer the question, Brother James?
That's how it should be. You should not be, because it's the thing. You have got to be in a place where, like you said, there's a united front. Nothing and nobody can come in between y'all. And if you're sitting there saying that I'm wrong, you better act like I'm right, or you better get real neutral. Don't you take over and go against me in front of them, because they will never forget that.
Yeah.
They will never, you will never live that down.
Okay, James just commented again.
I'm sorry, let me go back. No, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
He says, if the in-laws are being inappropriate and you're standing up, but your spouse is not supporting you. Okay. Yeah, that's a problem, especially if she's going to conflict with you as you're standing up for her. let's see, if the in-laws are inappropriate and you're standing up, yeah, there should definitely be no conflict for that. If the in-laws are being inappropriate, whether it's the man or the woman, there should definitely be support for the spouse in that regard.
Now, here's the thing that I'm in. I don't want to say disagreement with, but I can see where the challenge may come if the support from the spouse has to be communicated between the spouses on what that really means. Because the spouse not saying anything, the silence could feel like they're supporting the family because they're not saying, hey, watch out, don't say that about my spouse, or no, you're wrong. So them just being quiet could also be a lack of support, but that spouse may just not have the courage or may not want to be in the middle, or maybe try to figure out, they don't know how to do that. So the silence could just be, that too, but it may look like to the spouse that is not support. What do you think about that?
No, I agree completely. And sometimes even the spouse could be confused as to who's right or who's wrong.
Right.
And so their version of support might be their silence.
Yeah.
And so this requires a healthy level of communication between you and your spouse, so that you can ensure that you're on the same page. And I think as the healthier the communication between spouses, and the more you're able to get on the same page, and the more you're able to get on the same page, the closer you are. And the closer you are, the less likely you are to allow people to come in between you.
Right. And that's when, because these are not conversations that you have after you said, oh, we walk down the aisle, we buy this dress, tuxedo, we invite this 150 people, we have cake and ice cream, whatever you're going to do. And then you have this conversation. So let's talk about this, honey. So what's going to happen when our family does, you're not having that conversation.
Right.
Most people are not, but they need to be had. These are conversations that couples are not having, but if they reach out to coaches such as myself or Coach Vaughn, these are things that will be brought up in premarital coaching. When I talk with my clients for premarital coaching, we talk about things that y'all, and when y'all in the bliss of things, you talk about, we talk about everything. No, you don't. There's some things you're not discussing. You're not discussing the things that could trip you up. And you're sitting there going, how did we just fall on our faces with this? Because you never discussed it. So that's why it's really beneficial to reach out to a coach to really have those conversations when you're thinking about getting married, or when you just got married, or even if you've been married for a while, so that you can help you all can start to better communicate. And that better communicating is talk about things that you don't know that you haven't talked about.
Yeah, I agree completely. Here's another thing too. When you're dealing with a family, I mean, you get a feel for who you're dealing with, right? And so when you have the type of in-laws that are known for being inappropriate, or maybe even, I don't know, disrespect is a little different from being inappropriate. So I'll leave disrespect for aside, a different issue. But let's just say you're married into a family and they have a tendency to be inappropriate. I think it would be healthy to prepare for yourself a defense where you have certain responses that you kind of rehearse for yourself before you even get into these scenarios, because maybe they ask inappropriate questions like, how many times a week y'all have sex? Or, because there's some people who have no filter and they'll ask you whatever the hell comes to their mind, right? Yeah. And so I think you have to develop a clever way of sidestepping these issues, particularly if you're trying to avoid conflict. And that's a slippery slope, because you do have to, again, establish healthy boundaries. But some people, man, the elevator don't go all the way to the top. And so sometimes it's easier to dismiss their inappropriate questions with a joke, or by changing the subject, right, or some other means, rather than allowing yourself to be offended by other people's inability to cope in a healthy way with your family dynamic. You got a couple more responses right there.
Yeah, so Orinthio, I asked him to post the whole scripture for Genesis 2:24 because Orinthio just posted just that. That is why a man will leave his father and his mother, and he will stick to his wife, and they will become one flesh. That's how it's supposed to be, right?
Word.
So we got James over here. You want to read that one?
Yeah, he says, my cousin has been experiencing this for years now. I've seen it happen so many times. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, but I witnessed an incident where she was right, but her husband took the side of his family. Not cool.
It's not cool.
Like class on a Saturday. What do you say? Like school on a Saturday. No.
Right. And that goes into the respect level that's between the spouses. You know, like, how do you respect each other? What's happening? That is a clear sign that there is some real dysfunction happening at home when they're not around the family. Like somebody's not respecting each other, or they're both not respecting each other. And there's some issues that are underlined there, or the husband may feel like that's his time to really vent and really be outspoken, because maybe he's not feeling like he's being heard at home. It's so many different dynamics that could be happening behind those closed doors, but it didn't happen just in that instance. That happened sometime before they actually went down.
I got another comment here from Linda. She says, when my sons got married, I knew that his wife came first. And she knew that her wife came first, then the children, then their children. So I guess that's her way of saying she didn't interfere. And I agree with that. My son-in-law, my daughter and her husband, we all live in the same house. And, as two men, things, if you're not respectful of one another, and if you don't have healthy boundaries, that kind of dynamic can go off the rails real quick. But one thing I never do, at least to the best of my ability that I'm aware of, I don't interfere in their family dynamic. Now, if I offer an opinion, it's something that I think is in the best overall interest of the family. But if they have conflict, first of all, I don't ever hear them arguing or anything. So, but I don't take sides, or I'm on the side of what's right, not who's right, or who I think is right. I'm always on the side of what's right, but I don't inject myself into whatever conflicts they have going on, because for one, that's their business. And for two, like I was saying before, even if I came into the conflict, there was this one time where they did have some conflict. This might've been about 2 years ago. And I think in this particular instance, my daughter was actually right. But it was a relatively lighthearted conflict. But there is a high level of respect between my son-in-law and myself. And so we have the type of rapport where even in that instance, when I did side with my daughter, he didn't think, oh, you just siding with her because that's your daughter. Because there have been many instances where I've actually corrected a few instances anyway, where I've actually corrected my daughter on behalf of my son-in-law. So again, I think there are some of us who are able to remain impartial and be on the side of what's right rather than who we think we like more or whatever.
Right. I think that's really important, because a lot of times, when you cannot seek that wisdom, that's what that takes. It takes wisdom to be able to not offer, because I'm of the school that if you offer something, that means you gave it and somebody didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unsolicited. So if somebody asks for my advice, then I'm always going to say, I tell my son when they call me, if they both call me, I know we got to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So then before I offer or give them what they're asking me for, I automatically say, you sure you want this? Okay, let's go for it. But if you're asking for it, if you walking past a situation and you just kind of think, well, I probably should say something. No, you shouldn't. Keep going. Keep on walking.
Yeah.
Don't say anything unless they say, hold on, mom, dad, can you, that's when you step in, because when you offer unsolicited advice, you don't know what happened in the previous 5 minutes that you weren't there. You don't know what happened in the conversation a week before that brought this back up. You don't have all of those pieces. And when you don't have those pieces, it becomes kind of like raggedy, if you will. So you kind of giving raggedy advice. You only have pieces of those things, so don't give raggedy advice because you're giving it to pieces.
Yeah.
So,
and context is crucial.
It really is.
Sometimes these things, different things that are happening in conflict, they aren't happening in a vacuum. And so there might have been an offense that preceded whatever conflict that they're in. And you think you're resolving, you bringing your 2 cents to the table, thinking you're resolving a conflict from a current thing that stems from something that happened earlier this morning or yesterday or last week or whatever. So context is crucial, and oftentimes you won't be given the full context. And so to your point, it's often best to just stay out of it.
Yeah, stay out of it unless you ask. James says, she's my heart, and I almost snatched him one day, but she told me to stand down. I did it only because I didn't want to drive a wedge between she and I. And that's exactly what would have ultimately happened.
Yep.
If you would have snatched him and you would have hurt him, she would have been mad at you. Even though, and like Coach Vaughn said earlier, in domestic situations, the woman gets beat down and then the family comes in and beats him down. She's mad at the family because why would you do that? Don't hurt him.
Yeah. And now you got a case because they didn't call the cops on you and they back together.
Back together, loving on each other, ain't gonna be fighting again 2 weeks later.
Now you can't beat her up in front of me. We
right.
We're gonna have a problem if you're doing that. But
problem.
Yeah.
I even personally don't think James said, thank you, family. I needed to hear this. Awesome. Thank you. We're glad that we could serve you.
Yes, indeed.
I am even to the point where if I am like, if my son and my daughter-in-law call me and say, oh, we need your advice, and it gets heated, I love you. I'm talking to y'all later. I don't even want to be in the middle of the argument. Bye.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to, my stance in that is not that I'm cowering out. I feel like I don't want to feel any kind of way between either one. I don't want to feel like, son, you're not going to talk to a woman like that. Or I don't want you to feel like, girl, you talk to my son like that. We got a problem. I don't want that. So keep myself biased and neutral. Let me back out the conversation. Y'all have this going on. You want my advice again, call me when y'all calm.
Yeah.
It's simple, so.
And these days, everybody's a relationship expert, right?
You got a whole bunch of coaches out here, boy.
And you got a lot of people that are offering their pain disguised as advice.
Absolutely. Right. And have not gone through anything, no type of training. They feel like because everybody got experience, everybody want to be a coach. And that is not all that it takes. It takes way more. It takes some education. It takes some training. It takes you going through some things in the training aspect of it to be able to take your experience and form it in the way that is going to be helpful to other people. And people don't see that. They automatically think, well, as a matter of fact, I had a student before I left the university. And he mentioned, he's like, I really want to be a coach. And I said, well, what makes you want to be a coach? Because I've been through a lot. That's not the reason that you want to be a coach, little man. You really want to be a coach because you believe that the things that you went through, that now you've learned from them, and you believe that the keys and the strategies that you've learned help you overcome them so well that you want to give those keys and strategies. You don't really want to talk about the pain. Because it's like when I first became a coach, I didn't want to keep telling my story. I just wanted to talk about the keys and strategies. But I realized that people didn't connect to the keys and strategies until I told my story. Right. So that's the dynamics in that. But you shouldn't be talking about, let me tell you about what I went through. No, how do I get past that and get to where you are? And the only way that you can help them transform into that is to be able to understand the lessons that came from the pain, to be able to now give the lessons and not the pain, like you said.
Right. And it's so many people that don't know how to be constructive in their delivery, and it's, there are a lot of people who it's easy to pull their heartstrings. My wife is one of those people whose ever story that she hears first is the one that's going to pull at her. Okay. And so, and it wouldn't matter if my son-in-law came. If this was the scenario, this doesn't happen, right? So let me just be clear on that. But if hypothetically my son-in-law were to come to my wife complaining about something that my daughter did, and he was really upset and emotional about it, my wife would automatically be more upset before she even heard my daughter's side of the story.
Yeah.
And I think some people, it's very hard for them to be impartial before they gather all of the information.
Yeah.
So, and really a great deal of that is required if you're going to be a coach.
Yeah.
Because there's always more than one side. What they say is three sides, right? His, hers, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
You got another comment from Arinthio.
Arinthio says, rather than a mother-in-law tell her daughter-in-law what to do in her household, she should teach in a way that will not take away from her dignity and respect. The daughter-in-law should be humble enough to listen to her advice, but in the end, make her own choices. Absolutely. But I just hope that mother-in-law is not eliciting her advice. Rather, she is giving it when it has been solicited. Versus being elicited, and a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Part of I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
I was actually going to go back to what you said earlier about the empathy that your wife would show. I think that a lot of people do that, where they hear the story and they're so, oh my God. And a very good key to know if you're doing that is to really feel the feelings that you're having when that person's telling that truth, telling their side of the story, and you feel in some kind of way. You need to instantly shut yourself down and then step back and hear it from an unbiased ear. Like I remember even coming up, this is kind of not in-law situation, but coming up, there was instances in my family where I had to become an outsider to hear clear, because I'm like that. I'm empathetic. I'm an empath, and I attach to people's feelings if I don't center myself enough to say, we're not doing that. We what's right? How is this going to pan out from today? From not in this situation, but a week from now, what is this going to look like?
Yep. Let me take a pause for the calls real quick, y'all. Just for those of you who don't know, we have a marriage group. We have two groups. We have the His and Her Perspective group or page. So please join that page. If you're not already a member, go ahead and like that page and become a member. And there's also a marriage group that my wife and I have put together. It's called the Black Love and Marriage Society, Booed Up. Right.
Yeah.
Like the song Booed Up. So if you're married or in a healthy relationship, jump on over there and join in with that. I have a comment right here. Kimberly says, I was a single mother who allowed my son and his wife to live with me. And what happened was her mother, who is married and a minister, broke them up. Now what say ye? Let me read that again. She said, I was a single mother who allowed my son and his wife to live with me. And her mother, who is married and a minister, broke them up. What do you think about that? That's tough. I mean, it's not enough detail.
It's not enough information to give, because we talking about some erroneous stuff right now, because it depends on, it's too vague. Yeah,
that's pretty vague, Kim. We're gonna need some more information to try to piece that one together. But again, a parent, unless there's something, some egregious violations going on, some domestic violence, or things that are seriously compromising somebody's way of life, quality of life is a better way of saying that. There's nobody from the outside that should be breaking you up.
No.
So, and typically what happens is people, for whatever reason, sometimes people are jealous. Sometimes people think they know more than they do. And so because you are sometimes an oversharer with what's going on in your relationship, they'll give you some flawed advice. Yeah. And when you'll be governing your relationship with this half-cocked advice that somebody from the outside looking in is offering you, and they don't know but half the story.
Right. You really got to know where your counsel is coming from. You really must know that you're getting wise counsel, and you're not just hearing from the heart of the foolish.
Yeah.
Because the foolish can be, I've been through this and you don't take this, or I've been through that. You don't let somebody, when somebody comes to you you better not Let me tell you, you need to walk out the door then. Exit stage left, because you do not need their advice in your relationship, be it a girlfriend, boyfriend, for those who are watching us who are not yet married or on their way to be married, want to be married, or definitely if you are married, you are in that covenant relationship. If you are not seeking wise counsel, and that wise counsel could be somebody that's older, who've been married for a longer, much time, who've gone through some things, but that they're healed. Because just because they've been married for a long time doesn't mean that they're in a healed and healthy relationship. But you want to find that person that's either in a healthy relationship or somebody who's gone through that situation, gotten healed, and is now teaching those principles to other people to do the same. Yep. And that's the dynamic that you're looking at in the two of us. You know, you got a healthy, long-lasting relationship who's been married and they love each other. I'm telling you, it's so dang cute. It's ridiculous, right? I'm gonna get them t-shirts. He gonna put that t-shirt on, y'all.
The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. I ain't wearing no I'm cute t-shirt.
You know, and then it me, who, like I said earlier, have taken those situations that I've gone through and I've learned from them, and I've seen some of the real bad mistakes that I've made. Learned from those lessons, been taught and trained, and even in the process now becoming a marriage and family therapist. Got another year in school for that. So just a lot of different things that you see in the dynamics in the both of us that you can reach out to and refer your family, refer your friends, refer yourself and your spouse or your significant other to be able to talk to us, and so we can help you. Our whole thing here and what we're doing in Here's Her Perspective is not just to entertain you guys, but it's really to be able to help build, strengthen, and encourage healthy, long-lasting relationships that create abundance in their lives. So we bring forth the information and the knowledge and understanding that we've gathered through studying. I mean, hard times. We talk about up at 2, when we should be sleeping because we got to do something the next day. We're up studying, trying to figure out how to help our clients. So that's what you see here.
Yeah.
Any other things over there? Any other comments over there you got?
No, I just got several people that joined in. My mama just chimed in. What's up, Ma? Miss Crystal Anthony joined. Several people. Kimberly Snoddy. Look, let me say this. Experts have estimated that as much as 95% of people's overall happiness can be attributed to how well they're doing in their intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. Okay. As much as 95% of people's overall happiness can be attributed to how well they're doing in their intimate relationship. And this can be measured out by how you can see some people who think that happiness lies in how much money they have or how much wealth they've accumulated. But you got rich people committing suicide every day.
Every day.
Right. So wealth is no measure of happiness. Now, you can do a lot of things with money, but money cannot bring you happiness.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. Right. And then you can also see it in reverse, where you have some people who have what seems like very little. Right. As far as material possessions go, as far as money goes, but they are elated with the amount of love and joy that they have in their lives via their most intimate relationships. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm saying that to say this. You have this idea that right now we have a culture where our women are probably the most self-sufficient women on the planet. Right. Black women, I'm talking about. And in many regards, they're promoted to, you can't depend on no man, girl, go to school and get your education and get yours so you can take care of yourself and blah, blah, blah. And then you have these TV specials that are coming on now where you have women with their master's degrees and doctorate degrees making $500,000-$600,000 a year, and they're miserable.
Yep.
Right. And what I'm saying is, if you don't put at least an equal amount of effort toward what it means to function in a healthy relationship, right? Because ultimately that's where the bulk of your happiness is going to rest, not in how much money you make. Right. Not what kind of career you have. Yeah, there's some joy and happiness to be gathered there. But I'm saying that the bulk of your happiness is going to come from how well you function in your intimate relationship. And that requires a great deal of effort. It doesn't just go on autopilot. Right. You don't just get with somebody and because the sparks fly, that thing is smooth sailing. It takes work. And so to Coach Michela's point, That's what we're here for. We're here to help you get through that. There's some hard times. No couple is just smooth sailing all the way through. My wife and I have, even though we've been together now 30 plus years, it has never been just smooth sailing. It's better now than it's ever been, but there are always new trials and tests that come your way. So
it's growing.
Yeah, if you know, everybody could benefit from a coach at some, or most people, I should say, the overwhelming majority of us can benefit from having a coach in our lives.
Absolutely. Because people don't realize that no matter what situation that you're in, what career that you're in, however many awards that you've won, or all of these things, you know, for me personally, just kind of giving you a testimonial here, in my entire life, I've been an overachiever. I have been getting awards, Leader of the Year awards, being distinguished in front of thousands of people, all of these different things. But I found myself broken personally. So I was having these personal failures and all this public success. And that was because it was affecting everything else. And I was trying to cover it up with that. But I still, if you broke all those things down, you still would have seen broken Michelamonè still in all of the awards, right? You would have seen the cracks in the glass, in the trophies, right?
Yep.
But people don't think, they think, well, I'm succeeding over here, so I'm good. Just because I ain't doing over here, that's their fault. No, look at the mirror, check out yourself and see really what's happening. And it's usually, like Coach Vaughn said, it's something happening in your personal side of life that is really not, you know, up to par. Arinthio said that's why it's important to meet the in-laws and observe the interactions of their children and their mates. And if you see problems you can't deal with, run. Now, I don't know about that. What do you think about that, Coach Vaughn? Because I really think, what about those people who are grown? Because you got people that are getting married and divorced, so now they're getting remarried, and there's no dynamic like that. So if for instance, if somebody comes into my life and they want to marry me, they're not marrying my family. They're marrying me because my kids are grown, so they don't have to deal with that. So what's your thought in that situation, Coach Vaughn?
Well, his last sentence, I think, is what drives the point home. He says, if you see problems you can't deal with, run. Right. And so let's say, for instance, that you and your son had a unique kind of relationship where he cusses you out.
Okay.
Right? And so a man that's coming into your life might have a real hard time dealing with that. But if you don't have a problem with that dynamic, you and your son playfully cuss each other out, well, it ain't too many men that's gonna, you know, be at peace with some other man, even if he's your son, cussing his mama out. Yeah. And so if, as a man, comes into your life and he says, hey, you know, that's too much for me, if that's a problem that he determines he can't deal with, then yeah, he better run.
I get that. I see that now. I see that. I agree.
Linda says, my happiness is rooted and grounded in my faith in God. Let me say this to that. There are a lot of people, okay, and I'm not saying that this necessarily applies to you, Linda, but there are a lot of people who will use God as their hiding place. And there are a lot of, let's just say, women in particular who will marry Jesus, right? But that's not why you're here.
It's not.
Right? The purpose for a man and a woman to be here is each other, right? And so the goal, if God is your foundation, that's healthy, right? As a foundation, that's healthy, but your purpose for being here is to find harmony within a masculine feminine interaction.
Absolutely. So, you know, can I speak to that for a moment? Yeah. Minister, you know, a lot of times I've heard that in the church. Oh, my husband is Christ, and we understand the dynamics of the husband and being Christ and the bride being the church, you know. But sometimes that could be taken a little bit far. We have to make sure that we understand, like Coach Vaughn said, that the dynamic of the husband and the wife coming together is to be able to create that harmony within the contrast of what they're doing together. we have to also understand that you don't want to stand behind that, because unless the spouses believe in that too, now y'all not equally yoked, right? Because most times, and I'm not saying this is all the time, but most times the female is a little bit more rooted in the religion than the male is. And that's because of the dynamics of the headship that they have a challenge with. And I've seen this having my own church, seeing the dynamics of men not wanting to come in and sit under headship of another man. So if the wife, and this is going a little bit deeper than what she's saying, but if the wife is saying, we gonna do this because my pastor said, you out of order. That pastor should never have more say than your husband, whether your husband going to that building every Sunday or not.
Yeah.
So, for Coach Vaughn's point, you want to make sure that you're not hiding behind that, because we're still, the Bible says first natural, then spiritual. You have to deal naturally with your spouse, then spiritual, because they're not going to see the spiritual if they can't stand you naturally. They're not going to see the spiritual if they don't respect you naturally. They're not going to see the spiritual if they feel some kind of way about you in the flesh. So as long as y'all can now come together, and then, of course, like he said, have that foundation, then yeah, that's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember hearing TD Jakes say once, he was talking to women in one of his specials, and he said, don't you go home telling your husband what I said. Don't go home quoting your husband. Don't go home quoting me to your husband. And that's a lot. There are a lot of women who have had problems with understanding the pecking order. There is no man in your life that comes before your husband.
None.
And the same thing in the opposite direction. There is no woman that comes before your wife.
None.
Period. If you have anybody outside of your marriage that's more important than the two people inside of your marriage, look, my children don't even come before my wife. Now they're adults now, but even when they were children, my children are the byproduct, or let's just say the product of what my wife and I have established.
Absolutely.
How can they come before me and my wife? Now they need me on a different level. They may have more of a need because they're less self-sufficient, particularly when they're small, but they don't come before my wife.
Right.
And the same thing, she feels the same way. They are a product of our union. They don't become more important than our union.
Right.
Kimberly Snidey says, this is a good show. My question was too long, so I'll just listen. LOL. And she says, harmony within a masculine and feminine contrast. This is some good stuff y'all teaching. And she's doing cartwheels. And Linda came back and she says, I agree. I appreciate that, sis.
Thank you. And we have to, I actually left the church because the pastor apostle told me that my husband, he was going to minister at another church. And on a New Year's, I said I was supposed to be in position to minister at our church. And he told me that I needed to be in position at our church no matter what my husband was doing on New Year's Day. I said, I will be bringing New Year's in with my husband. And if you have a problem with that, bye. And I left. I didn't care what position I had, prophet this or whatever coach. It did not matter, because I understood the dynamics of my husband and me we done made a 2-hand circle. And our 2-hand circle excludes everybody else that can't keep those 2 hands together.
That's right.
So, and once you make that 2-hand circle, and you don't let people, the only person should be in the middle, because you still making a 2-hand circle with Christ in the middle. God is in the middle. There's no need for him to put the hands in, but y'all's hands, 2-hand circle, done. And so I got called all types of names. I was disobedient to the word, and man, but folks will try. They will try to make you feel some kind of way, and even use the word of God against you to do it. Yeah. Husbands and wives, it's y'all against the world.
Yeah, no doubt. And this scripture, be ye not unequally yoked. Now, what they're talking about is believers with non-believers.
Yeah.
But I like to apply that to marriage and to healthy relationships, because I think just because he's a Christian and she's a Christian, or he's a Muslim and she's a Muslim, and we both love the color blue and we both love sailing, and that doesn't mean you're equally yoked.
Yeah.
Right? There are some dynamics at play that you have to learn each other. So if he's an extrovert and she's an introvert, and to him, the extrovert loves going to parties and social gatherings and demands that their spouse comes along, even though their spouse or significant other hates those gatherings, that's going to be a problem. That's going to create conflict. And there's so many different ways that we can go about that. Here's another one. One person has an exceptionally high sex drive, and the other person has not only a very low sex drive, let's just say they don't even like to have sex
because of issues that they had in their past.
Yeah, whatever the reason might be. You both love Christ or Muhammad, whichever the case is, whatever your religion is, you both devout in that. You're both very good people, very honest, very what's the other word?
Loyal to your
yeah, all of the above, right? People of integrity and all of that. But inside the marriage, you don't align. And so you're not equally yoked, even though on paper it looks great. So, these are things that have to be discussed prior to. Now we're all off the topic, but I just felt, compelled to touch on that a little bit.
And that's good that you did. And just to kind of piggyback on that, Coach Vaughn, even if you find, because a lot of people feel like, oh my God, I'm not equally yoked, let me move on. I'm getting a divorce. It's not too late. Yeah. When you said I do and you've committed to that relationship, once that contrast appears, it doesn't appear for you to walk away from it. It appears for you to do something about it. And that's why Coach Vaughn and I are here. Let us help you find out how to make that contrast harmonize. I did a post maybe about a little bit less than a few days ago, talked about the whole balance and harmony. Which one would you want? A lot of people said they want balance. Some people said that they want harmony. Some people said that aren't they the same thing? And balance and harmony are not. Balance is 50-50. Because balance, if you're balancing something, there's both weights on the same side that are equal. That's what balance is. Harmony is taking what you have, whether you got 5 or 3, and taking it and putting it in position to where it's now coming together. That's harmony. Taking that contrast, that what you both, instead of bumping in heads with each other, now you're learning how to come together and be one. That takes skill. That takes a training. That takes knowledge and understanding that is maybe far beyond where you are at that time. It doesn't mean that you just give up. Seek some help. Find someone that can help you learn how to take that contrast and turn it into harmony.
I'll tell you, in the earlier part of my marriage, like things are great now, and people look at us and be like, oh man, how can we be like y'all, hashtag relationship goals and all that stuff. Right. But at the beginning of our relationship, we were not equally yoked. Mm-hmm. We both thought, when I said wife and she said wife, we didn't mean the same thing.
Yeah.
When she said husband and I said husband, we didn't mean the same thing. Yep. We just saw it in the movies. If you like each other enough, you feel good enough about each other, you get married, and that's that. But there's some work that has to be done after that. There's some learning that has to be done. And equally important, there's some unlearning that has to be done.
Yep.
And there were some very unhealthy and destructive things, habits, and ideas that I brought into our marriage that I had to unlearn.
Yeah.
And so until I was able to do that and shed those ideas and philosophies and so on, we were going to remain unequally yoked. And so through the course of our marriage, my wife showed up ready. She's been ready since, I met her when she was 12 years old, and she hasn't changed since then. She's gotten smarter, more wisdom, but as far as who she is as a person, she hasn't changed. I was the one that had to change in order for us to become equally yoked.
Yeah. And that goes even into the whole in-law situation. If you don't have, like Orinthio said, if you see the problems you can't deal with because you're seeing these patterns that are happening with your in-laws, and you see things that are just not copacetic, you got to figure that thing out. Do you stay and work those things out with help? Or do you stay work and fight through them and just end up in the end okay? Or do you just walk away from it? You got to figure out what's really important to you and know what your boundaries are, because a lot of people don't know even how to set those boundaries for themselves. Nevertheless, family, spouses, and significant others. But once you learn how to do those things, then you create the dynamic of the relationship that you really want, and then you ultimately can be happy in the desired relationship that you really have. So,
and look, I have I have clients from California to London, England, right? And what I learned is that our cultural dynamic, wherever we are on this planet, our cultural dynamic is still very similar.
yeah,
Right? And whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, whether you're in Europe, Black folk are Black folk, and we're dealing with some very similar things, right? And what it comes down to is that we've been inundated, or I should say it this way, we've adopted some very unhealthy thinking, some stinking thinking, right?
yeah,
Some very
yeah,
unhealthy ideas as it pertains to how we are to relate to one another.
yeah.
And we're not prioritizing healthy and harmonious relating between our men and women enough.
Right.
And really, I mean, if, I don't know, to keep it all the way 100 with you, we're on the verge of some very dangerous times unless we begin reversing those trends.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter, like he said, it doesn't matter your culture, doesn't matter how much money. I got clients that's making well into $300,000. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I have clients that are white. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you don't know what a healthy relationship looks like, you can expect y'all to work out the way that you think without some assistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need that example. You either gonna need the example that you saw, or you're going to go and seek out the information of what that example looks like so that you can mimic it.
Yep.
That you can DIY it, right? So you can either DIY it, figure it out, go through the hard times to try to figure that thing out, or you can go and find some great coaches that's going to help you work out those that have pinpointed exactly what's needed when that situation comes up, when this situation comes up. Oh, when you're here, they know exactly how to tap you in and bring you in so that you're tapped in, turned on, and you all the way up so that the relationship can get on in track. So
Yep.
I'm of the school that it doesn't matter how far in you are, how long you've been doing it, how long you've not been doing it, that it's not too late ever, as long as two people are in agreement that we need to work this thing out.
Yep. And I forget who was the one that said this. I don't know if it was Newton or whatever law of physics this is, but it says that nothing in the universe is ultimately ever at rest.
Yeah.
Right. So that means it's either growing and thriving, or it's decaying and dying. And that same idea applies to your relationship, your marriage, right? So if your relationship isn't growing and thriving, then it's dying.
Yeah.
And so what it says is that Les Brown said it this way. He said, life is like a fight for territory. And in the moment you stop fighting for what you don't want automatically begins to take over.
Yeah.
I'll say it again for the people in the back. Life is like a fight for territory, or in this instance, your marriage, your relationship is like a fight for territory. And in the moment you stop fighting for what you want in your relationship, what you don't want automatically begins to take over. So there is no such thing as autopilot. You never get to a place in your relationship or in your marriage where it's just smooth sailing or coasting or it's on autopilot. That never happens. And in the moment you put your relationship on autopilot, you've just surrendered the keys to your relationship to someone who's going to drive it, or to some energy that's going to drive your relationship into the ground.
Absolutely.
So
And I love it. I know this is good, y'all. I hope that you all enjoyed what we did today. We've been on here for about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome conversation. Thank you so much for engaging with us. As always, we always talk about how if you have something that you want us to talk about, make sure that you DM us. For those who have our personal text messages, you can text message us. You can definitely email us at harmony@hisandherperspective.com. If you want to book us to come on one of your shows or talk to one of your organizations, you can make sure that you email us at that same email, harmony@hisandherperspective.com. Coach Vaughn and I are here because we love y'all for real, for real. And we really appreciate y'all. Make sure that you are liking our pages. Coach Vaughn, the Love Alchemist. It's Vaughn, the Love Alchemist on Facebook as well as Instagram and Twitter, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you much.
And then Coach Michelamonè on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well on that as well. So reach out to us. We would love to talk with you. We are super excited to stay with us for this long time. We've been kind of just flowing, and if it's something y'all want us to cover because it's something you all have been dealing with, make sure that you let us know that, because we're here to serve you. We're here to make sure that the content that we are putting out here is going to be beneficial to those who are listening.
Yeah. Yeah. We're making relationships cool again. That's what we're doing.
We sure are.
Yeah.
We will talk to y'all later. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Coach Michelamonè.
Coach Vaughn, Love Alchemist. Love y'all. Peace.
Talk to y'all later. Bye.